You're good to go.
Great. Well, hello and good afternoon, everyone. If you are watching live and if you are joining us at another time, thank you for spending a little time with me to think a little bit about personal statements for health careers and some tips and tricks that will help you along as you are working on your personal statements. My name is Brianna Hyslop. I'm the Senior Associate Director of the University Academic Support Centers, which includes the KU Writing Center. And so we're going to be going through and talking a little bit about how you can be working on writing your personal statements. The agenda for today, we will talk a little bit about why you would write a personal statement, how to prepare. One method for writing personal statements, which is taking a narrative approach, as well as some general writing tips for successful personal statements. And at the end, I'll introduce an activity, and there will be some handouts made available to you for working on this activity to help generate and review the content for your personal statement. And of course, if you have any questions during this presentation, if you are joining us live, please feel free to ask those, put those in the chat and we will get to them. And otherwise, if you have questions after the fact, you can see the contact information at the bottom of our slides for the Writing Center. You can get in touch with us at our website, writing.ku.edu, and our phone number is there as well. And I'll share the Writing Center's contact information at the end of the presentation. So let's just jump right in to think about kind of what a personal statement is and why you might write them. You've probably heard a lot of different things about personal statements. And of course, personal statements might have different roles and applications for different types of graduate programs or different fields of health profession study. But you've probably heard a lot of myths and a lot of good information as well about personal statements. So it's always great to take a little bit of time at the beginning to take stock of what you've heard about personal statements. And if you're joining us live and you have any questions, if there's anything in particular that you've heard about personal statements and would like some help with, some support with, just let me know or reach out to the Writing Center after the fact. So what the AMMC says about personal statements is that this is an essay that provides an opportunity to distinguish yourself from other applicants and provide admissions officers with more insight into why you have chosen to pursue a career in medicine. So this is a document that, again, it's this opportunity. It's a chance that might not exist with some of the other materials that you are submitting in your application. So you want to take advantage of this opportunity to your fullest and take a lot of time to work on distinguishing yourself from those other applicants. So in order to do that, you really want to think about what makes you, you. Right? Use that personal statement that you're working on to provide a snapshot of who you are in a way that the admissions committee isn't going to find anywhere else in your application. You're going to be submitting a lot of other materials. They're going to be talking a lot about very specific things. So what can you add to that batch of materials that you're submitting in your application with this essay? How can you give a real sense of who you are as the admissions committees are thinking about putting together a cohort of students to study at their school? So one of the things that you want to be doing as you are working on those stories is making sure that you're balancing them, that you are really kind of taking the time to think about the whole package that you're putting together as an applicant and the way in which the personal statement fits into that full application. So you're going to be balancing your stories. You're going to be thinking about your personal statements versus any secondary application essays that you might be responding to. So if you've been asked to write on very specific topics for any secondary application essays, maybe that means that you don't need to take the time to repeat that story or that anecdote in your personal statement, because you've been given an opportunity to address that specific thing elsewhere. You also want to kind of take an opportunity to think about a kind of a limited set of experiences that maybe can't fit into anything else in your application. So for instance, what are the 3 most meaningful experiences that you've had during your course of study or your life that has led you to want to pursue a career in the health professions? The personal statement can also give you an opportunity, if you are not given this opportunity in a secondary application essay or elsewhere in your application, to address any unique hardships, challenges, or obstacles that you may have faced during your study or during your life as a young student leading up to your application. So, for instance, again, significant fluctuations in your academic record, if not explained elsewhere. One example of this, for instance, is I have worked with students on their personal statements for medical school who had a really rough semester because of something in their personal life. And that meant that they weren't necessarily able to dedicate as much time to studying as they had in previous semesters. And that impacted the grade that they received in an important course. But they were able to, in their application, in their personal statement, describe the way in which reflecting on that experience of that challenging semester allowed them to improve their study strategies, seek out academic support to improve their grade in future semesters, and really kind of come out of the experience as a better student and as a more prepared future medical student. And so there are ways in which you can kind of frame and address these unique hardships or challenges or obstacles that you might experience, and show an application committee why they should look at that as a opportunity in your application if you have not had a chance to explain it elsewhere in your application for the program. And then, of course, as you are thinking about those stories that you want to tell and how you want to be balancing your application, you want to take time to prepare. Um, a lot of times you will start thinking about that next step, graduating from KU and moving on to a new program. You get really, really excited and you want to just jump right in and start writing. You want to jump right in and start filling out the application. But really, I would want to encourage everyone who's working on these documents, these important documents, to carve out more time than you think you're going to need for the process. And that's really, of course, at the Writing Center, we encourage students to carve out more time for their writing of any project that they're working on, because the more time you carve out, the more time that you're going to have to seek out support if it's needed, or to spend on the revision an editing process towards the end before that application due date or your deadline that you've set for yourself for getting your application in. So one of the things that you can do to really be preparing is to pull out your planner, pull out your Google Calendar or any other kind of system that you use, and to schedule yourself and arrange your time and set some dedicated carved out time for working through your personal statement and getting prepared. Be thinking about what types of resources you're going to be reaching out to. Are you going to want to talk to any faculty about your personal statement and what you might include? It's always great to give those instructors a heads up that you might need some of their time, especially as we approach the end of the semester. Are you going to want to come to the Writing Center and get some support from one of our consultants on what you're writing, and bounce ideas about different versions of your personal statement or different stories that you might be telling? So it's always a good idea to prepare even before you start writing, to be thinking about your schedule and think about how much time that you're going to have to dedicate to the process. And then, of course, you can always start by considering some big picture questions before you get into the details, right? So here are a couple of examples of some personal themes that are really important and appropriate to communicate in your statement, but are kind of those bigger picture questions to get you started as you're preparing. So think about who you are, and a couple of different versions of statements that you could use to get yourself started if you wanted to do a free writing activity, to be jotting down notes and start collecting your thoughts, are to say, I am driven to what? Or I have learned to, or I believe, and let those prompts kind of start out your process of thinking about this larger theme of who you are. Who are you? And what can you really bring that is unique to a program? Another theme is, when does time disappear for you? Uh, think about that. Take some time to think about when time disappears for you, and what does this tell you about your passions? Is there volunteer work that you're doing that you get really passionate about, and when you do that, time just disappears? It really flies by. Is there a particular subject or area of study that when you're working on things, time just really flies by and it disappears, and it shows how passionate you are about that area? And then another theme to think about is, when have you changed? Um, so think about yourself before and after various events or activities or courses that you've taken at KU or experiences that you've had. Um, and how have you changed from before that particular event or activity or course? What was it about yourself before and after you had that experience that might show something about how you are unique and uniquely qualified to pursue your chosen field? So these are all great things to just be thinking about, be brainstorming. If there's a particular pre-writing technique that you like to use, like outlines or free writing or mind mapping, these are all great prompts to get you started on some of those things. And then there are a couple of other things to be considering as you're preparing and as you're getting started. And if you're someone who has already started working on your personal statement, these are all really great things to use, and questions and activities that you can be doing to go through and check your content to see if there's anything that you might want to revise or any changes that you might want to make. So as you're working, as you're preparing, as you're starting to write, also consider these things, right? If you're somebody who likes to journal and do a lot of reflective writing, grab your journal, go through it and review your past journal entries from volunteer experiences or from descriptions of activities related to your coursework that you've done. Or if you don't already have a journal and you haven't been doing a lot of reflective writing, you could start now. Make a list of the most meaningful experiences that you've had while you were a student at KU or during your life. This is a kind of a really great thing and something that will tie into an activity that I describe a little bit later in our presentation today. Also consider the why and the how questions, right? How do you know that you want to be a doctor? That might seem like a really simple kind of statement, um, but I'm sure for all of you, it is more complicated than, I've wanted to be a doctor since I was 6 years old, right? Those kind of cliches of the personal statement genre. Really take the time to think about, how do you really know that you want to be a doctor? What is it about the profession? What is it about that type of service and that type of work environment that you are really interested in? And then take it beyond that and think about how you've actually demonstrated it, right? How have you demonstrated that you know you want to be a doctor for these particular reasons or because of these particular experiences. Because it's enough to tell, but it's better to kind of show in your personal statement to be able to show or demonstrate that you know that you want to be a doctor for particular reasons. Going along with that, take a little bit of time to think about why medicine and not other career fields. What is it about medicine that really is appealing to you, that you feel really passionate about? And I see that we've got a couple of questions. So this is a great one, and this is one that goes into these kind of things to be considering. The question is, if you have any experience outside of the health field that might be useful for a personal statement, should I include these experiences? And I think that that's a great question. And it could be, if you have these experiences outside of the health field, it could be a way to really make yourself stand out as unique in the stack of applications that a committee will be reviewing, right? So I always think it can be a really great thing to bring in experiences that somebody reading your application wouldn't necessarily expect from somebody who's applying, or make a connection to a different field or a different career path that you might have experience in before you've been coming to a health field. And part of it is how you are doing that and how you're making those connections. So it's always important, again, with this idea of why medicine and not other career fields. Well, it could be that you have experience outside of the health professions or outside of health and medicine career fields that have paved the way for you to come into this new career field and be a really great doctor, for instance. So absolutely, if you have those experiences, I think that they can be very useful to include in your personal statement, especially if you haven't gotten an opportunity to show that off about yourself as an applicant in other areas of your application. But I would always say, make sure that you're being really clear in your application about the connections you're making between those past experiences and why you're applying to medical school or to a health professions graduate program. So it's always about making that connection. And I always think it can be really beneficial to demonstrate and to show for people who are reviewing these documents how you're making the connections, because it can just be a really bring a really unique perspective to why you're pursuing this particular path. So that was a great question. And if there are any other questions, please feel free to share those as we go through. And so kind of this all leads into this last part on this slide about the application committee, and they really want to get to know you. This is one of the few opportunities that they might have to kind of hear about yourself in your personal voice, right? And so they want to know more than what you've just accomplished. They will probably be getting a list of your accomplishments. They'll be getting your transcripts. They'll be getting a resume that shows the things that you've done. So this is an opportunity to, instead of just listing those accomplishments and rattling off one thing after another, to give them some perspective into how these experiences that you've had are meaningful to you, but also are meaningful to your pursuit of this particular career path. So just be taking the time to think through these various questions. You certainly don't necessarily have to hit on all of these things that I'm talking about in one personal statement, but hopefully taking some time to think about all of these will help you create the best personal statement to represent yourself that you can. Another thing that you want to be considering as you are doing this, as you're answering these questions for yourself. And if you've already written that personal statement, I'd kind of encourage you to go through with a highlighter or with a pen to underline and think about how you are tying in the AAMC core competencies to that application and to your stories. And I know that they have a lot of different core competencies, right? And so be thinking about, as you're planning these stories, as you're thinking about your experiences, how do those experiences, those events, those kind of outside experiences tie into the core competencies that the people on the application committees are going to be looking for in medical school applicants, right? So have you included a lot of interpersonal or intrapersonal core competencies? Have you been showing kind of those thinking and reasoning or the science core competencies? Where are they showing up? Are you really focusing on one area over another? And how can you balance some of those things in your application? So those are all really great things to be thinking about, and really great things to be seeking out support potentially from the Career Center or from faculty who have a lot of knowledge about what these kind of programs might be looking for and whether or not the stories that you're telling are showing off your knowledge of the core competencies and what they're going to be looking for in the best way possible. So that's another thing kind of I'd recommend as if you need a refresher to look those up and to just kind of go through and see where you have brought them up, where you've mentioned them or alluded to them in your personal statement. And so we were probably thinking, okay, so how do I do all of this, right? How do I take all of this preparation that I do? If I've already kind of worked on the content, but I'm still trying to figure out how to put it all together, how to really organize it. One way that you could write a personal statement, and there are many ways, and I've seen many different ways and many different approaches from students who are writing applications to medical school, and they've been successful for those students, even though they look really, really different. But one way that I recommend to get yourself started is to think about a narrative approach to writing your personal statement. And so taking a narrative approach is really all about telling a story, right? Telling the story of who you are and why you are applying and what is unique about you as an applicant to these programs, right? And so as you're thinking about a narrative approach and about taking a narrative approach, right? And again, this is just one way to do it, but it's a great way to get yourself started in thinking about organizing. Is that stories usually include a lot of things, right? Stories usually include a setting, they include characters, there's usually an event, an interaction between the characters, and some kind of synthesis that brings these things together, brings the themes of the story together. And it's about kind of the production of your thoughts and feelings and values and understandings and about your personal development. And so think about the stories that you have read or watched or listened to, and be thinking about how you can create your own story for the personal statement. So as you're getting started, you might write 4 or 5 little 1-paragraph stories that show yourself in action, show yourself serving others and learning about your chosen profession. And then after you've done that, after you've got your kind of 4 or 5 1-paragraph stories, start weaving those paragraphs together. think about how they should be ordered. What should come first? What should come second? What fits together? What needs a transition to link them? And order them logically and add those light transitions in between the short stories. And then add another paragraph, a brief one paragraph conclusion. And that one paragraph conclusion is your opportunity to reflect back on the 4 or 5 stories that you've told, noting what the themes are, kind of capturing and synthesizing the thoughts and the meaning of the stories that you've told, and then point forward at the end towards a promising future, right? This is an opportunity to reflect on the past, but demonstrate to the people who will be reviewing your applications that you have a great sense of how that past is driving you towards a promising future in a health profession. All of these things combined are going to make you a really great application and a really great applicant for their program. And then after completing that program, a really great doctor or health professional. So this is one way to kind of start thinking about how you can actually draft and then organize a personal statement. And so here are just a few selected writing tips that can help you as you're doing all of this. And this is a great list as you have already, if you've already gotten something written or you're already starting with a draft already in hand, this is a great list of things to kind of go and look back on and be thinking about how this fits together in your application. So you always want to use your own words, right? Maybe polished, maybe edited words that you've gone through and you've reviewed several times. But again, this is an opportunity for the committee to get to know who you are, right? And so you want to use your own words and show with true stories as you're creating that narrative of who you are and how you want to pursue a health profession's career and how you will be a good fit for a medical school program. You should kind of jump directly to action, right? You don't want to kind of leave them hanging. You only have a short amount of words that you can use to create these documents. So get right into the action. You also want to get quickly to the profession you want to enter, right? Again, like we talked about earlier, you want to show why the health professions or why you want to go to medical school or why you want to be a doctor and not some other career that would be potentially equally as fulfilling in another area, right? You want to really show why you're driven in this particular direction. Go deeper than wanting to help people with science, right? The committees have probably seen a lot of those applications, and of course they probably know if this is something that you're pursuing, that you want to help people with science. So go deeper than that. What really do you want to do? How do you really want to do it? What is it about helping people with science that you're really passionate about? Focus on your experiential preparation, right? What actual preparation have you had? What experiences have you had? And how does that set you up for success? If you are going to be telling stories or anecdotes about working with patients, you want to focus on those patients, not just on the procedures or on the illnesses that they may have been experiencing or that you may have been supporting them through. Focus on the people, focus on the patients. You should be providing details, examples, and explanations. Don't take those things for granted. This is a new audience for you that you're writing to, and so you want to be able to provide those specifics when needed. So if you've already had, this is a great thing to check. If you already have a draft of a personal statement, go through it and look for those details. Do you have them? Are they there? Have you explained things well enough for this new audience who you're speaking to? And be thinking about that audience kind of constantly as you're writing that. Think of the audience think about who you're writing to, right? Always. And so that's a great thing to be doing if you want to come to the Writing Center for support, or if you're going to a faculty member, or if you're going to a peer, a classmate, a friend, and asking them to look at a draft. That can be a great way to get some insight into what somebody who's coming to the document fresh, right? And as an outsider, will be able to bring to it, and they'll be able to tell you what they need as an outside reader, as a member of your audience. You want to avoid criticizing members of the profession, and you might not, you might not think about it. I've seen personal statements that do that have criticized members of the profession, and so you want to avoid doing that, right? You never really know who's going to be reading these things. And in my experience, once you get into graduate programs, even though mine was in English and not medical school, it's really a smaller world than you think. And a lot of people know a lot of people. So you want to avoid criticizing members of the profession. You might want to offer explanations for significant weaknesses, right? We've already talked about if you haven't been given an opportunity elsewhere to address things that might be seen as others as weaknesses in your application. But again, there are ways to do that to show how you've really persevered or come out of an experience as a stronger candidate and a stronger student and scholar and researcher than before the experience. You want to keep a positive balance tempered by realism, right? I have seen personal statements say that, I'm going to become a doctor because I'm going to be the person to cure cancer. Great. And I love the positive energy. But there are a lot of people right now working really hard on those areas of research and those areas of study, and have been doing that for a really long time, right? So temper that kind of positivity and enthusiasm and excitement with a sign that you know what you're really getting into by going into these fields and by getting into these professions. Show integrity and consistency, and show that you're a good choice for the profession, not just that you feel that this is a good career path for you, right? If your kind of number one thought to that question we talked about earlier is, how do you know you want to be a doctor, is I want to make a lot of money, right? Or, if this is the field I go into, I'm going to be able to get a job at a family friend's private practice, right? This is a good career move for me. That may not be the most compelling reason for why you should be in the health professions to people on the application committee. So show why you are good for the profession, not just why the profession is good for you. All right, so now I'm going to kind of briefly introduce the activity and another resource that I have for you. And I believe that these links are going to be shared. I also have links to these documents in the PowerPoint notes. So if anybody wants the PowerPoint slides, I'm happy to kind of work on getting those slides to you so that you can get to these. But there are two handouts that we have and that I've used a lot in the Writing Center when doing these personal statement workshops, and specifically these workshops for kind of the health professions. One is just an informational handout with some of these writing tips and tricks. The title is The Personal Statement Pre-Medical Pre-Health Tracks. It has a lot more detailed information and a lot of these different writing tips to be using both as you are writing your personal statement, but also as you're reviewing your personal statements if you already have a draft. The other activity or handout is more of an activity handout. It's called Personal Statement Generating Content. And that handout is going to have two sides. On one side, there is a kind of a Q&A activity. right? It has a lot of questions for you to get you thinking about various ways to get started in writing and how to generate just content. If you're doing free writing or journaling about this as you're getting prepared, there's a ton of questions that you can take time to kind of write answers to and use those answers to start building your short one paragraph stories. Those questions are also a really great way if you already have content, if you've already got some things drafted, if you've got a final draft and you want to work on tweaking it, to kind of go through and say, did I answer any of these questions in my personal statement? Where did I answer them? Did I answer them completely? So that is a really good tool for both generating content and then reviewing the content that you already have generated. The second side of that handout is what we call kind of a two-column model for generating content. So it's split a table into two columns. In one column, it's going to ask you to think about what are the things that you know your audience values when you're writing a personal statement. So when in these applications, right, in your applications to these health programs, professional programs, what are the things that they value? Maybe it's a list of the core competencies. Maybe there are other things that you know that their committees are going to value based on having conversations with faculty or going to the career center. So you make a list on one side of the table of those core competencies or other things that you know that your audience is going to value. In the second column, you kind of cover that list up and make a new list that is, what are those meaningful experiences that I have had? You know, what are my top 3 or top 4 most meaningful experiences or qualities about me that I think are really unique and really kind of shine through and make me stand out from other applicants? And then once you've done the second list, you uncover both of them and look at them. And it's kind of like a matching exercise, right? Take a pen, take a marker, and draw lines between the stories that you've come up with or the brief descriptions of the qualities that you have that are unique and an audience would be excited to learn more about, and tie them directly into the list of things that you know your audience is going to value. Match them up. That way, as you are working on writing those short paragraph stories, if you're following the narrative model, you know that you're going to be tying in those core competencies kind of automatically in your writing. If you've already written a personal statement or you have a draft, this is a really great way to reverse outline and check, right? Have the stories I've told match up to the qualities or the values or the core competencies that I know that my audience is going to be looking for. And if you've told a story and you can't see any kind of reference or allusion to some of those core competencies, it might be an opportunity to say, I need to revise this paragraph to make it a little bit more clear to my audience why I've included it, how I see it related to the core competencies that they're going to be looking for in an applicant. So those are two kind of Google Drive links that you should be getting. And if you don't get them, if you need to get them, you can always reach out to us and get those so that you can use them on your own time to be working. And then if you've taken those, if you're working on those activities, or you already have a personal statement written and you want to get some support on helping you do some reverse outlining or checking them against core competencies, or just to get another set of eyes from an outsider perspective who hasn't been sitting down and thinking about the personal statement all the time, right? Who has a fresh set of eyes, we always recommend that you come to the Writing Center. We can be a really great support for your written work, for your personal statements, as well as all the other writing that you're doing while you're a student here at KU. But for those of you who are currently working on personal statements, even if you don't have anything written yet, right? Even if you just take one of those handouts that you're going to get from this presentation and start thinking about some things and bring that in to work with a consultant. we can help you get started. We can help you with editing and polishing it up before you submit your application. This semester, we do have both on-campus hours where we're available. If you want to come in to Anschutz Library and sit down and talk with one of your peers about your personal statement, you can do that. And then we also have our online options, which include our video conferencing, right? So it'll be like you're Zooming with someone, and also our e-tutoring option, which is that great option where if you already have a draft written, it's always better to do e-tutoring if you already have a draft of something written and you're really, really busy, but you still need feedback. You can sign up for one of those appointments and get written feedback emailed to you, but from one of our writing consultants. So you can see our hours here. We are on campus. We have some consultants on Mondays, Tuesdays, and Thursdays who can help you out in Anschutz Library up on the 4th floor. And we also have a lot of online consultations available Mondays through Fridays. Our hours might be slightly different each day, but we are available kind of all day through the evenings, Monday through Thursdays, and on Fridays from 8:30 to 5. And you can go to writing.ku.edu to book an appointment with us. And you can always reach out to us at 785-864-2399 if you need to chat with somebody and get some help setting up an appointment. And of course, just stay connected with us, stay connected with the Writing Center. We are on campus, like I said, those 3 days a week. If you need to stop by, you have our phone number there, so you can give us a call. Our website and email should be really easy to remember. It's writing@ku.edu or writing.ku.edu. And you can also follow us on social media where we post a lot about various appointment openings that we might have, and also a lot of other writing tips and tricks that might help you as we head towards the end of the semester. But I hope that kind of you take advantage of the Writing Center, right? It's one popular question I get is how much does it cost for KU students? The Writing Center is always free. You can always make an appointment. In fact, you can make up to 2 appointments per week. So if you're working on a personal statement and you find a consultant you really like to work with, you can meet with them twice a week, every week throughout the rest of the semester. If there are any questions that you have about this presentation or about more tips and tricks or more resources for writing personal statements, you can always reach out to us at writing@ku.edu, and we can help get you connected with those resources. So thank you for taking some time if you've been joining us live. If there are any other questions, I'm happy to answer them. So if you have any other questions, I'm happy to answer them now. If you're joining us after the fact and on your own time, thank you so much for taking the time to learn a little bit about some personal statement tips and tricks for your health application, for your health profession applications. It's been a great afternoon. We always love supporting students who are working on these applications in the Writing Center. We see a lot of them, so don't be shy. Please come and use our services to support your application process.